What's up, Metallurgists? It's Logan, the Metal and Beer Snob here, and tonight I am joined by Alan from Let's Talk Metal, and of course, the host of this intrepid show that occurs every Friday. We're here to talk about two new wave of traditional heavy metal albums coming out March 28th, and they're kind of going head to head, both competing for our attention. So, which one will come out on top? In the right corner, we've got Lady Beast from Pittsburgh. And in the left corner, we've got Savage Master from Louisville, Kentucky. Let's see.
My magic's alive, using creation to transform me through divination. I am the healer, Alchemist. On the edge, the edge of evil. On the edge, the edge of evil.
So, Alan, I'm happy to be joining you tonight to discuss this because this kind of follows a topic that we first started, I think, with our Christian Mistress review
That's right.
that we
Yep.
did earlier in the month, where
I
we
think
were
we
kind
shouted
of,
out both of these albums as coming up pretty soon, and so
yep.
now
And
the time has come.
here we are following up and kind of giving our final thoughts after having more time to digest. And one of the points that we made in that Christian Mistress interview is that the new wave of traditional heavy metal scene is very saturated in 2025.
As most heavy
And
metal genres are these days, there's a lot of bands out there for everything, it seems.
yep. And here we are. Both of these albums are coming out on the same day, and they kind of approach this genre in two different directions and styles, and I
Mhm.
think do appeal to two different types of fan when it comes to traditional heavy metal. So
Mhm.
that will be, how you might decide which album you want to check out is which one just seems more appealing to you as a fan of this genre.
Yeah, I agree. And because at the surface, these two bands seem to have a lot in common. They're both five-piece bands. They both have a female vocalist. They've both been on the scene for about 10 to 15 years. They have both released five albums for both of them. This is their fifth release. They're both coming out on the same day. So yeah, there's a lot of things that it'd be easy to kind of lump them together. And we did pair them together for this review, but there is a difference in approach for each of these two. A funny side note, though, too, even though they've both been on the scene the same amount of time and have the same amount of albums, this is the first time they've ever released an album in the same calendar year as one another. But they've kind of, hopscotched each other on the calendar up until now. But this time they not only landed with a new album both in 2025, but yeah, both getting released on March 28th. I don't know if we've mentioned it, but let's see. The Lady Beast is coming out on Dying Victims Productions. Fantastic label, really high quality roster. And Savage Master is coming out on Shadow Kingdom, US label that's been around for a long time and often, comes up with some, real solid, overlooked kind of gems in the metal underground too. So which one should we start with?
Let's start with, I guess, Lady Beast. So is this your first exposure to Lady Beast and kind of diving into them like as a full-length album?
No, it's not. I've checked out two of their earlier albums, so I don't know their entire catalog. But let's see. It's been about 5 years since the last album came out, which I believe is called The Vulture's Amulet. And yeah, when that one came out, some folks had recommended it to me. So, I checked it out, and it was one of those albums that it was good. I listened to it a few times, but I never really circled back around to it. So it was just kind of fell in that bin of like, yeah, okay, that's a solid, maybe somewhat kind of generic new wave of traditional heavy metal release, but kind of file the band name in the back of my mind for future use. And then let's see, last year their second album got reissued. I think it was maybe their first vinyl pressing of album number two. And so kind of once again, it's like, okay, check it out. Spun it a couple of times. Felt like it's a solid album, but the band's just not really standing out for me. Like we mentioned before, can be a pretty crowded field, and it just didn't really grab my attention and hold on to it. So once again, it kind of got filed in the back of the file cabinet. But so when this one came out, though, I still wanted to check out and see what they were up to in 2025. So that's kind of my history with Lady Beast. What about you, Logan? Is this your first outing with them, or are you a
Yep.
veteran?
Nope. This would be my first outing, and I had heard of them before and knew of the Vulture's Amulet album that you talked about, but
Mhm.
crowded scene, you can't listen to every single album, and that was just one that fell by the wayside. And I'm kind of happy to finally be, visiting this band because they're a local American band. I mean, there's a chance we might be able to see them live at some point, and they're
Hmm.
on the scene. And I do think it boils down to what you're saying, like with both of these albums, what is there that is unique that can really separate them from the pack that you can really, place that this is the sound of Lady Beast or this is the sound of Savage Master.
Hmm.
So I'm curious, do you think that they've grown as songwriters since that 2020 album or like their earlier stuff?
For me, I think they have. This album, unlike those other two, this one did not take long to kind of get its claws in me and, hold my attention a lot better. I think some of these songs a little tighter, definitely a little catchier. And maybe it was just, again, I got, that one extra spin and everything started to click or something. But yeah, Inner Alchemist was very immediately satisfying. It's
Yes.
not a complicated record. It's pretty, you can pretty quickly figure out what it is and where they are coming from. There's a lot of Iron Maiden influence. There's a lot of late 70s and early 80s Thin Lizzy influence, especially, in the
In
guitar
the guitar
dynamics.
work, right? Yeah.
Absolutely,
Like
yes. If the guitar players from this band don't have posters of Scott Gorham, on their walls when they were teenagers, I just won't believe in anything anymore. That just has to be the truth as it exists.
Tight perception towards the fragile heart.
So yeah, you can pretty quickly, figure out you see what they're doing, and they're not doing anything original. That is going to be a turnoff to some listeners. Yeah, it is a problem new wave of traditional heavy metal bands can run aground on. It's like, all this has kind of been done before. However, if you're not original, you just have to make sure that what you're doing, you do incredibly well. And on this album, I think it really comes together for Lady Beast, and they do it incredibly well. And it makes for a really enjoyable listen, even if it doesn't, expand the boundaries of traditional heavy metal whatsoever. So that would be my take in a nutshell. What do you think of it, Logan?
I yeah, I like how you said, when it got its claws in you, because this album
Hmm.
definitely has claws. It's got a certain element of speed and um even maybe like power metal, I'd say, in it, like in like the
A
chorus
little bit.
structure, like that
Hmm.
I think kind of does separate it. I mean, it's nothing new, but it still is unique and it has, I think, some character that I could prescribe as the sound of Lady Beast. I mean, definitely the instrumentation is like top notch.
Yes,
The guitar work is, phenomenal. Do we have two guitarists in this band?
I believe we do.
We do, yes. And you can tell that they're definitely playing off one another. And you
Hmm.
can honestly hear that a lot in like the intros to the songs. So it'd be like
Yes.
these trade-off melodies back and forth. And the strongest element of this album, I think, is the overall musicianship. The bassist also has chops here, and he actually makes
Hmm.
himself pretty well known. Or actually herself, I'm sorry. Her name is Amy Bianco, and she has some great elements and points on this album. In total, it's a very competent heavy metal record for 2025. And then when you add the vocals of Deborah Levine on top of this very competent heavy metal backbone, I do think it takes their sound, even one level up.
Hmm.
She's got a good variety. I mean, her very much, middle like baritone voice, but she goes from being like kind of sweet and very like catchy to almost like a speed metal viciousness in tracks. Like the
Yes.
lead off single, The Inner Alchemist, sounds very clean, definitely.
It's one of those big kind of power metal moments,
That's what I
like you
was,
mentioned
yeah,
with the chorus
yeah.
before that. Yeah, it's got a great catchiness to it. She delivers it really well. It's instantly memorable, even though you've heard songs like that before. This one will get stuck in your head. It takes one play, and you will remember the chorus to Enter Alchemist, no doubt.
And there are other songs on this album like that too. Starborn was a big one for me.
Yep.
Feed Your Fire, that was actually the most like power metal sounding in
Hmm.
the chorus. Like it's kind of a more long drawn out, like
Hmm.
it's got like this operatic kind of feel, which makes me think of power metal for sure.
Feel your power, feed your fire, flames reach to the sky. Live for desire, feed your fire.
And then at the same time, she's got this like snarl that she can like go into,
Yes.
which is a very nice touch. Tracks like Crohn's Crossroads and Off with Your Head,
Hmm. Through the Eyes of
phenomenal
War.
through the
Yep.
eyes of war, phenomenal like variety in the vocal department that I think makes the album overall more interesting too because
It
of it.
I agree. Yeah, she doesn't have a ton of range vertically. She's not
No.
scaling up and down. But yeah, the fact that she can, break out that kind of wicked sneer that gives things a little bit more of like a don't mess with her kind of edge to them on and those tracks they match up well, like the ones you mentioned and yeah, Through the Eyes of War. Those songs, they're not thrash songs, but they're grading into something a little meaner and a little tougher sounding where the emphasis isn't on yeah, the big chorus hook. And it does give the album a nice variety of tunes. That's something that I think will separate better new wave of traditional heavy metal bands from ones that are very run of the mill. The run of the mill ones write the same song at the same pace and tempo and has the same hooks in the same places. The better bands, even when they're working within that particular style, they know how to mix up their tracks. They'll have their faster ones, they'll have their slower ones, they'll have their catchier ones. And yeah, Lady Beast has a great mixture of styles on display here on the Inner Alchemist for sure.
And even how they pace it in the album helps it
Hmm.
because it's like you got the catchier song, and then here's the fast ripper right in the middle of the album, and then
Hmm.
it ends with the ripper as well with Off with Your Head. So,
Yes. Yep, goes out with a bang.
hmm
Sister of three tied to the sea, the water blood goes through her veins. Island sacred right, and the boat left untied. Nothing is pointed to blue.
So yeah, okay. Sounds like yeah, we're both pretty on board with the Lady
yep.
Beast release, and yeah, I do. Of the ones I've heard by the band, this is easily my favorite. I think they've yeah really nailed it here. Um, again, this at this point, you can start thinking of these as veteran bands. They've been, I mean, when you're on your fifth album, you've been on the scene for pushing 15 years. You're not newcomers anymore. And I think, the experience really shows through really nicely on this album. But we have another album to talk about too, don't we?
As I said, in the other corner, we've got Savage Master with Dark and Dangerous. So this band is the one that I actually am familiar with. I've been following them since their 2019 album,
2019 was Myth, Magic, and Steel.
Myth, Magic, and Steel. Yes.
Hmm.
And I briefly checked out their 2022 full length, Those Who Hunt at Night, and
Hmm.
I can definitely tell that they've kind of been on this trajectory to release an album like Dark and Dangerous, probably maybe since the very beginning of their career, but I can definitely say that there were elements on Myth, Magic, and Steel that are kind of fully realized, in my opinion, on Dark and Dangerous. And to me, Those Who Hunt at Night is definitely a little bit of a flawed album, and like the production hadn't really caught up to, where they wanted their songwriting and their choruses to go.
Hmm.
But finally, here we are in 2025, and I feel like they fully found the production that they want, got their songwriting a bit more cohesive, and have just really ironed out a solid track listing overall for all 11 songs. There, I kind of given away what I'm thinking of this album, but Alan, have you heard this band before?
Yeah, and my history with them lines up with yours. Myth, Magic, and Steel was the first album I checked out by them, and did like that album. I think it's definitely an above average new wave of traditional heavy metal kind of offering. Got a fair amount of play. It was not one that only got, a few plays and then has collected dust. That one is, I thought, yeah, this is pretty fun, pretty solid, works pretty well. But yeah, like you, the follow-up, Those Who Hunted the Night, that one, a lot of fans, it was well received. When it came out, folks were immediately recommending it. I spun it a few times, but yeah, something about it never quite clicked with me. You had a much, better, more in-depth insight than I can offer about that one. It was just like, well, yeah, it feels like a Savage Master album, and it's okay. It wasn't bad. I didn't dislike it, but it didn't hook me. So it kind of got, again, relegated to the I'll revisit it someday kind of pile, but who knows when that will be. But yeah, when this one came out, just like, yeah, I definitely want to check back in, see what they're doing. And yeah, this album's actually, I would agree with your take on it. It sounds like, everything's really tight here. The band knows exactly what they want to do. They get in, do it. It sounds really good in terms of production and delivery. And yeah, it very much feels like this is something they have been working towards, as you said. They've got a certain, kind of look and aesthetic that is meant to go along with their sound, which we'll talk about in a second. And it feels like the package comes together really, really well on Dark and Dangerous.
Lady Beast to me sounded like they were, writing to show off that they're, competent musicians and showing off what they all can do with the instruments. To me, Savage Master's writing on this album sounds like they're writing for the song specifically. Like they're writing to build to this chorus and then to this guitar
Mhm.
solo, and like none of the musicians kind of overdo it in any key way, but it really makes the album feel a bit more focused and streamlined. There's no
Mhm.
like random bass jam section or over the
Mhm.
top guitar solo where you wouldn't expect there to be one. Everything kind of falls where you would expect it to be, but to me, it's executed extremely well and with care.
Yeah, well said. This one, in terms of musicianship, yeah, it's, feels more restrained. It's, not at the same kind of, showy level as the Lady Beast album, but it still does exactly what it needs to do. It's building these songs to be, instantly sort of, headbanging type numbers that are going to be easy to remember, easy to stick, easy to get a crowd moving in a live environment.
Yep.
And I've heard people say this band is very fun to see live with their visual aspects and such. Again, the vocalist Stacey Savage, is kind of going for the traditional Betsy bitch kind of trope of something between Elvira and Doro, kind of fuse the two together somehow. And the guys in the back all have just like on this particular album cover, they've all got like red ski mask kind of hoods, so they're all like her, I don't know, bondage gimps or something.
Yep.
I don't know
That's how
exactly
I
how
read
that works out.
it.
But yeah, so they're very much playing into that, horror, spooky angle, but from the fun and campy side of it. They're not trying to be gory or gross or really shocking in a way. It's the, she's going to be this kind of, sexy, seductive succubus. They're going to look like they're supposed to be led around on, leashes and yeah, it's just going to be kind of, a good spooky, goofy kind of time. And the musicianship ties into that fine. These are songs that are meant to be fun, and they are written and performed to maximize the fun that you're going to have with Savage Master.
Hear the preachers singing under the master's reign. Satan, desire, keeper of the living flame. Satan, vampire, demon of a thousand.
And to kind of talk about the overall sound they're going for here, to me, it's just 80s sleaze, basically. It very much seems like an album that wants to be, 1984 to 1986. We're talking like the new wave of British heavy metal when they're a little bit influenced by the glam metal scene and they're writing hits like Turbo Lover and but then also at the same time, some of the choruses even make me think of straight up glam metal, like maybe early Motley Crue days, or even in the later 80s, like the band Vane comes to mind on some of these choruses.
Okay.
Just with how like kind of sleek they're trying to be, they're trying to seem sexy and uh, but at the same time, very catchy. Like the hooks here are all top notch. The whole band gets into writing, being on these choruses. Like they use the group vocals a
Yep.
lot to highlight, the lead singer's hook that she lays down. And I think to great effect. I think it makes the choruses have a nice variety and they don't really blur into one another. Like most of these
Hmm.
songs to me stand apart and stand separate. And I was very easily able to get into this album. Like Lady Beast, same thing. but this one
Mhm.
was even quicker. I think after the first spin, at least half of the songs I already had stuck in my head, and it's just gotten, worse or better
Mhm.
depending on how you want to look at it.
Yeah, no, lots of good points there. And yes, yeah, I think they are very much going for that sort of, if Lady Beast is going for like, the, early and mid 80s Iron Maiden kind of sound, Savage Master is going for maybe more of like the mid and late 80s Ozzy Osbourne sound, like the Ultimate Sin, minus
That's a good
the
call.
guitar legend. T take the guitar shredder out of the picture, and think, yeah, some of that classic, solo Ozzy stuff where again, a little bit spooky, but in kind of a fun way. Songs that are again are really meant to be crowd pleasers and go over well when they're on stage. Yeah, I can definitely agree with all of that.
One day your destiny will come. If not for me, then by someone. You're gonna pay for your ways and your wicked smile.
There is one surprising track on this album for me, and it's the closer, which is called Cold Hearted Death. Whereas, we mentioned, Lady Beast kind of, goes out, with, a bit of a snarl. Savage Master actually closes with their most restrained number of the album. Again, most of these songs are very much more the kind of, beer and party kind of stuff. But Cold Hearted Death is a kind of slower, more mournful song, which I think actually it sounds out of place, but as the album closer, I think it works well. It doesn't clutter up the album, it doesn't break up the flow. So the end is a good place for it. But it does let the band show off a little different dimension and show that, hey, we're not completely, one trick ponies here whatsoever. Stacy's vocals sound really good on this closing track where she gets to kind of wail and croon a little bit more. It's a song that if you had like a really kind of warm, heavy, distorted, amp sound behind it, it would sound like something from a band like Jack's Thoth a lot more than it would sound like a 80s heavy metal spooky party band. So I definitely wanted to shout out that particular track just because it's very different, yet it still works really, really well for them.
Let the night team guide you away to darkened shores. Cold-hearted
I was just gonna agree. I'm glad you mentioned that. That's my favorite song on the album.
Oh, is it?
Probably
Cool.
my favorite song I've heard Savage Master write, just because it sounds so unique to their sound and like they're pushing it in a different direction.
Hmm.
And I just love it as the album closer. It kind of gives it a just an extra more romantic, spooky kind of vibe towards the end. And
Well said.
yeah, beautiful closer and just killer vocal performance. And the band does a great job of dialing it back so that she can take the forefront. So
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and it's unexpected when you get to the end of the album because they've very much established a style over their other albums and over these songs. Yeah, so to hear them mix it up like that, again, there's often the adage that you should end the album with like some kind of big hell-raising number to drive it home. In this case, they didn't, but I think it actually still works to great effect. So it feels like we're both on board with the Savage Master album here as well.
yep. I do think it's maybe one track too long. There is a song called Devil Rock, which I'm just not the biggest fan of. It
Yeah.
kind of takes the camp one extra level that I'd rather it not be.
Hmm.
And the album does feel almost a little long at 38 minutes. I think if they took that one out, it would be a lean, mean 34-minute album, and we would get to the epic like sing-songy arena rock punch of I Never Want to Fall in Love, and then Cold Hearted Death. We'd get to both of those tracks a bit sooner, and I think it would have even more of an impact. But that's just my one nitpick. But I'm
Yeah.
I'm definitely with you, really like enjoying what they've created on this album as a whole.
Yeah. Yeah, Devil Rock, a week ago I would have agreed with you. Because yeah, for all the first spin, all the early spins, that was the one track that felt kind of flat. Savage Master, I think they are at their best when they are doing the numbers that have a little faster tempo. When you get to the songs that are a little more mid-paced, that's where maybe you start to notice that, yeah, the musicianship, that they're not trying to do a whole lot of fancy stuff. So there's more gaps that are left unfilled. Devil Rock felt that way for a while. I will admit the song has started to grow on me a little bit. The last couple of, spins, it's been like, okay, maybe this song isn't that bad. And if nothing else, it does have one line that just makes me smile every time Stacy sings it. It's the line, and I can't sing, but I'll, just kind of going, she's
Belt it
doing,
out.
it has like these kind of, short little couplets is basically kind of the rhyme scheme for it. And one of the lines she delivers right in the middle is that, dirty looks and holy books never mattered to me. And it's just like, that's cheesy, but that's cool. I can dig that. So I can't hate that song. Even though, yes, the chorus is basically one line and they repeat it too many times. But yeah, that is one little moment of cheesy lyrical genius that I love in Devil Rock.
Wicked ways and dirty deals. One night in the moonlight, one look in my eyes.
I do want to shout out one more song though that I do think helps to, beef the album up in the middle. Screams
Mhm.
from the Cellar is probably my second favorite track on the album after
Good one.
Cold Hearted Death. It's got a bit more almost rat kind of vibe with the pacing of it, but Stacy has a unique vocal delivery and she gets a bit like higher pitch and almost harsher with it. And the chorus is immediately hooky and I just like it's kind of a change of pace from the rest of the album, and I think fits very well as the sixth track in the order.
Hmm. Yeah, this is another album that's just kind of, well laid out in terms of the track list. Again, like I said, I do prefer some of the faster tracks like Never Ending Fire and Devil Child, but they space them out. The slower ones like Devil Rock or, I Never Want to Fall in Love. Well, those two come back to back, but yeah, overall, it's not like side A is really strong and side B gets kind of slow and weird. It's no, it's all spaced together. And again, even most of the mediums or mid-pace songs work pretty well. So yeah, at the end of the day, feels like another really solid, really fun album. So when we get here to the end of the day, Logan and I were talking. We thought, well, what if you can only get one? I mean, for a lot of folks, you've only got so much money to spend on new releases, and there's a lot of good new releases coming out in 2025. So we kind of thought we'd put ourselves on the spot, and so yeah, if we each only got to buy one, which one would we buy? We have not revealed our answers to each other yet. So time to time to fish or cut bait, Logan. Which
All
one?
right.
You've got them both in your hand, and you've only got $15 left to spend. Which one's going home with you?
A very relatable feeling there. The one I keep is Dark and Dangerous by Savage Master. That would be the album I feel like I'm more likely to return to. And maybe it's because I've been following this band for longer, and to me it does seem like they've, captured what they've been trying to do for
Mhm.
at least, two albums. And I think the tracks are so catchy and the sound is a bit more unique in 2025 that I am more likely to return to this one than I am the Lady Beast album. So there you go. Alan, what's your pick of the two?
Well, this works out well because I'll take the other. I'll take the Lady Beast, and we can both go home happy, and we
There,
don't have to fight over the same
there,
CD in the
there
record
we go.
store. Yeah, if I only get to pick one of these two, I will pick Lady Beast's The Inner Alchemist. I think they did a fantastic job of bringing everything together. Musicianship is top notch. I mean, on one hand, you could say it's almost traditional metal paint by numbers, but again, they do it so well. Every place where you know there should be a guitar solo, there's instantly a guitar solo going off. Every place where you know they need to like maybe, okay, that song was good, but now you need to make it a little more aggressive. Blam, the next track is more aggressive. They know exactly how to build this album. And it's something a lot of bands in this style do struggle with. Can't tell you the number of times I'm listening to a new wave of traditional metal band and I feel like, okay, you've just delivered a cool chorus. Now hit the solo. And instead, they just kind of sit there and chug the rhythm for like 8 measures. And I'm just like, Mm-mm, nope, nope, nope. Come on, you've lost all your momentum now. You didn't do the thing. Lady Beast knows exactly what they're doing and how to build it. And so, yeah, for me, I would have to take that one out of the pair. So, end of the day, we are split. But I think at the end of the day, we can say that, yeah, these are both good albums. And if folks have a chance, we'd recommend both of them getting checked out.
Absolutely. As I said, I think two different types of traditional heavy metal fans can,
Hmm.
find something here. If you're a fan more
Yes.
of the choruses and like just the overall darker sounding package than maybe the Savage Master, but
Hmm.
if you want a very much more heavy metal oriented and competent, like speedier version of this sound,
Hmm.
the Lady Beast all the way.
Yeah, yeah, I would kind of agree. Yeah, if you're looking for something to put on at your next, Friday night drunken party where everyone's going to wake up the next morning and not know where their pants are, Savage Master. But yeah, if you're wanting to hear, a really solid, take on, no frills, pure heavy metal greatness, Lady Beast. That's your spin. And sounds like that's going to take care of it for this review. Logan, do you have anything you want to shout out as a call to arms before we call it to a
I
close?
I do in fact have a call to arms here.
Go for it.
Also on Dying Victims Productions, and this is actually a band I just discovered earlier today when, seeing what else is coming out. And it's Dying Victims Productions coming out also on March 28th. We've got Hexecutor with their third album, Where Spirit Withers in Its Flesh Constraint. So I really only got the chance to spin this album once today, but it was an impressive first spin. Very um fast, almost thrash speed metal, but the guitar playing seems top notch, very melodic, almost neoclassical at times, and I just was enjoying where they were going with the songs. I will definitely be checking this out a couple more times over the coming weeks, and definitely when it comes out. Hexecutor, where spirit withers in its flesh constraint.
All right, good deal. And I'll give a quick shout out to the new Tower album, Let There Be Dark. It came out March 21st on Cruz del Sur Records. A lot of folks are familiar with this band. I'm not very familiar with them. I'm still kind of wrapping my head around the promo, so can't say a lot about it yet. But I think if you've watched this long on this review and you're interested in bands of this style, the Tower record should at least be on your radar as something that's getting dropped here in late March as well. All right, I think that is going to do it. Thank you for checking out this review. Please stay tuned to Heavy Metallurgy for other reviews. We have the Album Club show every Wednesday night, and we have the Heavy Metallurgy live stream on Friday nights. Lots of good content. There's a ton of good albums coming out this year. You're going to have to pick and choose sometimes on which ones to buy, which ones to save your money and take a pass on. So we're here to help do that kind of very thing for you. Tune in again. Logan, thanks so much for inviting me to help you review these two particular albums. And until next time, everybody stay tuned and keep banging your head.
Yep. Cheers.